Welcome to our 30 for 30 virtual environmental seminar. 30-minute conversations with some great doers and thinkers like Dawn in celebration of 30 years of the Outdoor Academy. OA is a semester high school program for 10th and 11th graders who want to take control of their learning, connect with the outdoors, and feel the support and responsibility of living in community with others. For 30 years, we've been changing lives as part of the broader Eagle's Nest Foundation, where our mission is experiential education for young people, promoting the natural world and the betterment of human character. Our integrated focused curriculum has introduced nearly 1,400 OA alums to rich topics in the environmental humanities for 3 decades. And throughout April, we're continuing that tradition with an exploration of craft, community, environment, and intellect, our cornerstones, with this speaker series, drawing on the experiences of some of the best in the business. If you missed last week's session on tradition and innovation in craft with Banjo Man Noam Pikelny, you can find the recording of our conversation on the Outdoor Academy's YouTube channel, where we'll upload all of the recordings of this series. Of course, this series is developed in recognition of the 30th anniversary of the Outdoor Academy. We're having an in-person reunion at the end of April. I encourage you to register if you're an OA alum or friend of OA and you can make it. But we're so excited to have this virtual series for those who can and can't make it as a celebration of what we do at the Outdoor Academy. And today I'm really delighted to welcome Dawn Chávez. Dawn is the Executive Director of the Environmental Leadership Program, or ELP, supporting visionary, action-oriented, and diverse leadership for a just and sustainable future. In addition to their regional and national fellowship cohorts, ELP manages the Ray Fellowship Program and the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program Alumni Network. Dawn will tell us a little bit more about those later. Dawn was previously the director of the Boston Youth Environmental Network and education director of the Urban Ecology Institute. She served on the boards of the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits, Conservation Trust of North Carolina, and the North American Association of Environmental Education. So has a great view of the field for sure. Before ELP, Dawn led Asheville Greenwork nearby through significant growth and development and is still based in Asheville. We've asked Dawn to join us not just because of her tremendous work at ELP. You can see from my pin, I'm a fellow of the Environmental Leadership Program from their New England network in 2008. So I'm representing ELP for us, Dawn. But also because Dawn has such a unique perspective on the field of environmental learning and on community organizing. So Dawn, I certainly want to ask you all about your current work at ELP, but I'd love to hear first about how you got interested in environmental issues and education. So tell us your story. And 25 years into an impressive career with all these organizations, what do you think is the through line or the common thread that connects all of these things for you?
Well, I'm so happy to be here and with you all today to help celebrate the Outdoor Academy's 30th anniversary. Um, and I wanted to start off with just my introduction. And to do that, I have a few slides to share um, with you all. So again, my name is Dawn Chávez. I am living in Asheville, North Carolina, the home of the Cherokee. And I am originally from the Bronx in New York, made my way through New England and ended up in Asheville about 10 years ago. I'm the daughter of Arlene Chavez and George Chavez, or Jorge Chavez, and the granddaughter of Louis and Marion Storjahan and Guillermo Chavez and Herminia Sono. So it's so good to be here today and to start with my family, my recent ancestors who are still with us, some of them, and to begin the journey through the short version of my life story and what brings me here today. So when I was in middle school and high school, I participated in some environmental programs, experiential education, One of them was at a camp in Massachusetts that was designed specifically for young people from New York City, from low-income backgrounds, so we could spend a month in the outdoors. And I just thought of that experience when I was getting ready for this talk and the experiential learning that happens with the Outdoor Academy. So in the lower left, that's little me when I was 12 or 13 or so around that age, on the top of a mountain in southwestern Massachusetts. And then when I was a junior, between my junior and senior year of high school, I did the Cornell Environmental Sciences Interns Program, which was funded by the National Science Foundation. And I just mentioned that now, as so many federally funded programs are being defunded and are under attack. And I just was really influenced by my participation in this program, which similarly was designed for individuals from underrepresented backgrounds from across New York State, where we did a summer-long internship on the Cornell University campus, working alongside graduate students doing research. And my research was on tree swallows, and just loved working on that and started getting a different perspective, not just outdoor fun and recreation, but also research. And I went on to college at Cornell, where I spent a summer, each of my summers pretty much I spent doing some sort of field research. And one project I worked on was studying common terns in colonies. And so this young woman from the Bronx was riding a little motorboat out by herself across a big lake to sit on an island and look at birds all day. And so it was just a very different experience from what I had growing up. But I will say too that those formative experiences when I was in middle and high school were based on and built off of experiences I had with my family. I'm one of 5 children, and my family couldn't afford, big vacations, so we would go camping each summer for a week or two, and in Massachusetts usually. And it was an inexpensive way to get the whole family out together. After college, I went on to study environmental education to get a master's degree at the New Jersey School of Conservation in New Jersey, and with Montclair University. I got a fellowship. And so you'll begin to see one of the through lines I want to talk about is experiential education. When I was in this program, I got a special fellowship to get my master's degree while I taught during the day at the School of Conservation, which was a huge outdoor learning center in northwestern New Jersey in Stoke State Forest. And I would work with 6th graders mostly during the day, doing things like climbing walls and ecology studies and life skills, like survival outdoor skills, more water things with canoeing. And then in the evenings, a couple days a week, I would travel 60 miles to the campus of Montclair University and take courses in curriculum development and education and environmental science. And then after that, I went on, there was a brief interlude there where I worked at the Manus Education Center, which was also for kids from New York City. And I felt like I came full circle around from being a camper at a different place, but very similar, and then coming to be the director of the Manus Education Center, working with kids from New York. And then I was accepted into a doctoral program at Antioch University in New Hampshire, and began my journey in doctoral studies. Again, very experiential, very hands-on, using my lived experience as the basis for my research. I got to a point where I was ready. I defended my dissertation proposal, and then probably like the next week found out that I was pregnant with my first child, and the PhD took a back seat for a while. So
No.
I didn't finish it, but I worked really hard on it. And one of my faculty advisors, Libby McCann, is here today. Hi, Libby. Great to see you. Oh, this is at the Manus Education Center. And then I wish I had a better picture of the Urban Ecology Institute logo, but it has since closed since my time there. So I had to do the best with what I had. But I worked at the Urban Ecology Institute in Boston for a few years, doing field studies with middle and high school students and as their education director. And then I went on from there to start coordinating and building a network across the city of Boston and the surrounding area called the Boston Youth Environmental Network, which was for environmental education and youth employment practitioners, involved universities and employers and schools and environmental programs, a whole slew of things. I did that for about 7 or 8 years. And then I moved to Asheville Greenworks, which I don't think I have in here. No. But also in the time that I've been in North Carolina, I've served on a few boards, including the Center for Nonprofits, as Jesse mentioned in my intro, and the board of the North American Association for Environmental Education, which is a national organization. I'm also currently serving on the board for the Switzer Fellowship. The Switzer Foundation, the Board of Trustees. And they're an organization that also supports environmental scholars and in their graduate studies, and just being part of that network. Moving on. So that brings us up to the current time, that whirlwind of my life. So I have been working at the Environmental Leadership Program, or ELP, for the past couple of years. Started in June of 2023. And I also did the program when I was in Boston. So my first child was about a year old when I was accepted to the program. And we went, I still went ahead with the program. It's a retreat-based, cohort-based model of a program. So we had 6 months of a fellowship where we had 3 retreats that were in person and also regionally based. So like Jesse, I was in the New England Regional Network cohort. So with about 25 other people, and I was able to bring my 1-year-old along with my husband, who took care of him during the day. We had a retreat on Thompson Island in the Boston Harbor. And it was just an amazing experience of fellowship and learning, leadership development. And I'm so happy, almost 20 years later, to come back around and be leading the environmental leadership program. I think that's it for my slides, and I will stop sharing. So yeah, so that you heard the through line of experiential education, also coming full circle and wanting to always give back to those who in my community, and to return the favor of all of the experiences that I was able to receive and the opportunities that I had. So, and also just the importance of making the outdoors accessible to everyone, regardless of ability or background, or maybe even because making it more accessible to those who might not have had these opportunities when they were growing up.
Dawn, thank you so much for sharing so much of your story. And I think it's worth recognizing that you have had a pretty unique view on the field of environmental education because you've been so committed and involved with specific organizations, but also supported some broadly as board member, as advisor. And so I really appreciate that you have a kind of unique perspective, and also, not shying away from recognizing that some of these programs come and go, right? That the Urban Ecology Institute, even if it was so important to you, has come and gone and had a really incredible impact for the time that it was operating and that you were working there, I'm sure. I guess I mention it that way because I have a couple of questions that are probably related, and you mentioned some of this already, but why do you think that we need programs like these that focus on making space for leaders from underrepresented populations? And I ask it that way because there are so many recent attacks, like explicit attacks on DEI initiatives, and attempts to scrub organizations of their DEI work that are, and that those attempts are impacting programs like ELP and the Ray Fellowship, and certainly so many other organizations that you're a part of. So why is it important that we have these programs that are doing the things that you say you benefited so well from in so many ways? And how are these attacks on DEI initiatives really impacting the programs now, that from your perspective?
Thanks. That's a wonderful question and so important, especially right now in this moment in our country. Um, Before I go into my response, I also like to mention the other programs that ELP has under its umbrella, and that includes the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program's Alumni Network. And so that's a mouthful, but the Conservation Scholars Program was in place for many, many years, and it has just come to a close. The Doris Duke Foundation has sunset that program, but it was for college students to who are from underrepresented backgrounds to do environmental research and to be part of a cohort as well. And so there's an alumni network in the US. I think it was at 6 or 7 colleges across the United States. And so the alumni have, um, they're now putting into place an alumni-led network. So having opportunities to meet up with each other and support each other in their work now as college graduates. We also have the Roger R. Liner Young program, which is the Ray program. And Dr. Young was the first African American woman to receive a PhD in zoology. And the program was named after her as this pioneer in the field and having to overcome really difficult circumstances to achieve that. And um, that program has been around since 2015, 2016, and it is a 2-year fellowship for young people who are recent college graduates within 3 years of graduating, who come from underrepresented backgrounds, and they are hired by an environmental organization to work in conservation or clean energy. And then they receive support from ELP throughout that, mentorship opportunities. So I mentioned these programs in addition to the environmental leadership programs fellowship program because they're all connected and different in some ways. But they all share the cohort-based model for leadership development, and that's really important. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But they all also have come to prioritize inclusion and bringing people together from different backgrounds. And the reason that's so important is, we have really complex, challenging issues right now, or, climate change, food insecurity, natural disasters, and political disasters. And we need each other. We need diverse voices coming together, perspectives from different sectors, from different generations, from different backgrounds and lived experiences to really have the best chance of addressing these issues that are facing all of us. I think a lot of people and organizations in the nonprofit space that I've worked in for a long time. I think a lot of folks jumped on the bandwagon of diversity, equity, and inclusion following the murder of George Floyd in 2020, issued statements and made the case for DEI in their organizations and how they were committed to it. And I think that they did these things without doing the work that it actually requires to make that commitment a reality, where now that DEI is being challenged in so many spaces by the government itself, the folks um, who weren't truly committed to these values, the wind shifted and their commitments blew over like a house of cards.
Hmm.
So I'm struggling with that right now, seeing that happening around me, and feeling like I can't blame folks for having to make difficult, really, really difficult decisions. Um, but I also feel like, well, I know that the environmental leadership program, we're standing firm in our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as access and liberation. And we are supporting the fellows and senior fellows who've gone through our programs. So I think it's really important to continue in that commitment and to um, stand by the folks who've been through our programs and the people that they work with and serve. And so I wish more people would find their allies at this time
Hmm.
and stand together.
Yeah, it seems like there's both of uh, this abandonment of DEI principles in the cases where those commitments were shallow, but also there's very real challenges to organizations like ELP and the Ray Fellowship where those commitments are deep. And so I think of the kinds of uh, higher education institution based programs that you're supporting and running, and the amount of federal funding that goes to support those organizations, or the actual federal agencies where so many fellows work, and how there are threats to their very livelihood and the work that's happening in those agencies right now. So I appreciate this point that there's a shallow commitment that is being swept away in this wind of attacks on DEI initiatives, but also just the very real impacts on organization where those commitments are deep and are so central to the work that you do at ELP and so many other organizations. So thank you for supporting a broad base of people working in this sphere. I think it's really, really important that the alumni networks from these various fellowships and organizations are connected across sectors. And so I think at this moment, however harsh the reality we're facing in these challenges, you've built through the work you've done over decades and through the work that ELP and these fellowship programs have done over decades, really built a stronger, more resilient network of folks. I mean, the people that I know from my cohort of the 2008 fellowship program that I did are some of my dearest friends for sure, but are also people I would not have met otherwise, and people that I might not have thought I was working in league with. And so not only is my perspective improved by my exposure to Patricia Acevedo's work in Boston Public Health at the time, or Kate Stevenson's work in Green Building and Design at the time, or all the numbers of people who were in my fellowship program, but also just by the accountability that they insisted on in me. And so it leads kind of to the next question that I have, that I think is so central to our work at the Outdoor Academy too. And it really is about the importance, or maybe it's the impact of cohort learning. For me, it was not just a diversity of perspective, but being held accountable, having some accountability buddies in the room who who believed in me and were invested in me for no other reason than they wanted to see the good work continue. And we grew to love each other for sure, but it's only because they held me to account. What do you think are the real benefits of this cohort learning model in the way that ELP does it in other places that you've seen?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I love the sharing of your own experience. Everybody's experience is different, and um, but I think, one of the commonalities of cohort-based learning is building a community, and it might be with your entire cohort. If you're in a group of 25 people, that's challenging, and you all also have these other smaller one-on-one relationships, and you can find in ELP, both in our Ray program and in our regional national fellowship program, we have what we call pods, so sort of like a pod of whales. You have a smaller group that you meet with that helps each other navigate the program and develop their personal leadership plan and have a sounding board to work through some of the challenges that they're faced with. Um, Accountability can sometimes have a negative connotation, like you're going to be held accountable. And if you're not doing what's expected of you, there's some kind of consequence. I think that's the negative connotation of accountability, but um, I like this idea of loving accountability and how having somebody who cares enough to really share with you um, things that you're doing well and areas where you could improve, and really helping to hold up a mirror to you
Hmm.
and give you that advice that other people might not feel able to share with you. And it comes from a place of caring, concern, and love. And I think that it sounds like the Outdoor Academy helps foster that and cultivate that kind of community. And I know our programs at the Environmental Leadership Program also do that. Um, there's a lot of peer coaching that goes on, that we introduce models for doing that for each other, mentorship opportunities as well. And so you're getting feedback from a lot of different sources. I think sometimes the work that we're doing can be sort of isolating, head
Yeah.
down. I mean, I know I work remotely, and sitting here in my little office in Asheville while the staff that I work with are all over the country, the fellows are all over the country. So
Mm.
it can be kind of um, lonely sometimes, but then looking out and seeing I have this whole network of folks that I can draw upon um, makes the world seem a little bit smaller and closer.
Yeah, like you actually have a team with you, and in some cases, our work can feel very much alone. I think that one of the things that's struck me about my exposure to ELP folks, and that's not just my fellowship cohort, but the many cohorts that have coalesced into this broader network, is the same thing that really strikes me about the Outdoor Academy, and that is that these are people who have a taste for this cohort learning and try to replicate that in their lives in other ways. So uh, any of the Outdoor Academy alums who are listening to or watching this now or later, uh, not only should you be looking into what are the opportunities for these explicit fellowship programs that Dawn is supporting, uh, and but also just thinking, as so many fellows do, as so many OA alums do, of the ways that you can create those kinds of support networks within your own field, whether that's in your explicit place-based community. That's really important. It's one of the reasons that the regional networks model of ELP was so effective, to encourage collaboration in a place. Or if it's also within your field in a broader sense, and being able to connect with folks who are doing different bits of the work, because it's all part of the same work of creating community for a more just and sustainable future. Dawn, thank you for expostulating on those points. We do have It's already been 30 minutes and we're
Oh
trying
my
30 for
goodness.
30. So my goodness. We have a few minutes for questions. And I know if you want to put a question in the Q&A, you are welcome. I do see that there's a little bit of that in here. But we had one early from Lori, who's from semester 2 of the Outdoor Academy. So near 30 years ago, exactly 30 years ago, actually. And Lori was just here this past weekend as with so many of her semester mates. So 30 years on, these folks are still in touch with each other, just as I am nearly 20 years later with my ELP fellows. Lori says, how do we connect with and inspire rising generations to work for and trust in environmental solutions? I wonder what you think about that question.
Thank you. That is a big question that I don't have a ready answer for, but thinking about mostly what I think about when I think about younger generations. And, I just turned 50 this past summer, so I hit my
You
milestone.
did it. Keep going. Keep going.
I hope so. Yes. And I work with a lot of folks who are much younger than I am. And, I have two children who are in their late teens. So I think about the younger generation a lot lately. And I think the one thing that I think is that they are inspired. They're inspiring to me. And for the older generation folks like myself, I think one of the best things that we can do is to get out of their way and
Yeah.
let them do the things. Um, and really lending them our support in figuring things out or leading. And support can look like using our networks. I have a very large network now. I've been working so many years, and I'm more than happy to make connections and um, share that with young people. I have now all the responsibilities of family and just work and everything. And I think about, oh, I would love to have more time and just flexibility to get out and go to protests or travel the world. I was just speaking to a colleague this morning who was telling me about all the places around the world that she's been, different consulting gigs, and I don't even think she's 30 yet. So just a lot of freedom to do, and I think that um, we can support folks. I think as far as connecting, we got to go to where people are. So I think about rather than like reaching out and drawing in, going out and finding the places where people are and just becoming, you know, a part of what's going on already.
I think it's really important for us to remember, especially in this, I'm saying on the Zoom meeting, uh, in this hyper digital age, that so much of this connection can happen in our places, in our local places. It may not even be the kind of bigger structured fellowship that we're talking about, but I think there are opportunities to put yourself in connection with people in real life, at the library event, at the rally at the courthouse in your town, even if you can't be involved in the big event or feel disempowered by the enormity of the task that's out there. I think that if you put yourself in a place, put your feet firmly in your shoes next to someone else who's doing the same thing, you start walking together. And I think that's one way to start building some of these cohorts in communities of support, is to really connect with people in your local life,
Right.
in the analog. Uh, but it strikes me, Mary had a question here as well about effective environmental education. And as you were speaking, I was thinking so much, Dawn, of so much, you know, really impactful and important middle school environmental education, those 3-day trips or that week-long trip in middle school. Maybe you hold a snake, or maybe you test water quality, maybe you just hike the hill. And these are formative things for folks at that stage in their development, for sure. And it lights a fire for environmental learning in a lot of folks. But boy, it seemed like you in so many ways. I'm thinking about the Boston Youth Environmental Network, and in the work that I wanted to do too. I was hungry for a longer term exposure and
Mhm.
engagement in that learning process. And for folks who are coming of age through their adolescence, which is why I so love the Outdoor Academy and the work that I did previously in higher education, because I think there's a mobility there.
Mhm.
But for me, I was really hungry for that longer term exposure together, that investment together. And that's what's exciting about the cohort model. Over many years, you could be engaged with these people. But what do you think makes a really effective environmental education based on your experience?
Well, you said a lot of it, I think. Um, that's a great question, and I think it varies. There's so many different types of education, and I think the more the better, of course. What you said about the kind of the length or the depth of experiences, sometimes we call it dosage, or how many times.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of evidence that multiple, at least five. So if you're having an outdoor education or environmental education experience, like if you're going into a school and working with students, if it's, you might get some engagement from like a one-off experience, guest speaking. You get so much more from repeated exposure and building on one thing to the next. When I was with the Boston Youth Environmental Network, we had a program that we started, a mini grant program called Get Out and Learn, or GOAL. And it was to help teachers, middle school teachers, and elementary school teachers partner with environmental programs to do more of a series of learning experiences.
I love that.
Yeah, it's great. And I'll also make a plug for the North American Association for Environmental Education has its guidelines for excellence in a lot of different areas like civic engagement and climate education, and guidelines for professionals who are doing environmental education. And they're also just a really great resource online. I can share their web address in the chat, but it's naaee.org.
Great. There it is.
There it is. Thank you.
Katie is running the show for us backstage. Thank you, Katie, the Outdoor Academy. And Don, we've made it through our questions, and we've made it through our 30 minutes of discussion, and it seems like we've only just scratched the surface and gotten started. But I really appreciate that so much of your work has touched on what we're trying to do at the Outdoor Academy, and I've seen it myself personally in some of your world, and just really appreciate that there's a kindred spirit out there uh, helping to make these kinds of experiences possible for so many other people, whether they're high school kids that we have the pleasure of working with, or grown folks out there in the world otherwise. So I encourage everybody to please look into the offerings of the Environmental Leadership Program and the related programs, and to find those ways where you can engage with your peers in any kind of a peer mentoring or accountability work. It's only going to make our shared work stronger. Um, uh, if you are able to join us next week, and the next of our 30 for 30 virtual environmental seminars is going to be with Bill McKibben on April 16th. There it is. Following, we'll be joined by Kate Stevenson, one of my fellow fellows from the New England Regional Network of the Environmental Leadership Program in 2008, and a green building expert. And on April 30th, we'll be joined by Jim Merkel in speaking about his recent film, Saving Walden's World. So, Dawn, I want to say one more time, thank you so much for your time and for all your work these many years. I hope we see each other more in person in the neighborhood.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun, and it's great to be part of this celebration.
Thanks, Dawn. And thank you all. We will see you next week at 7 p.m. here on the small screen. Take care.